Bakuzan is currently a free SSR Plus character that can be awakened during the first anniversary event. So here's everything you need to know about Bakuzan and whether or not he is worth pulling for. So let's get into his attack skills. So for his basic attack, he attacks a single target with 2 hits for 140% of his attack. And for his ultimate attack, he deals charge damage to a column by 200% of his attack, which will be able to stack at least 2 times, and has a 40% chance to stack for a 3rd time. So you can potentially be dealing 600% of his attack as charge damage. And if you have his keepsake, you'll unlock his ultra ultimate attack, where he will be able to deal charge damage to a column by 300% of his attack, which will be able to stack for 3 times, so you will always be dealing 900% of his attack as charge damage. So his ultimate attack is good when going up against Bakku's shields, since his charge damage will be able to go right through those shields. Going through his passive skills, so for his regular passive, before any character's action, he removes the attack boost of 3 random enemies. And after his action, he'll reduce the attack of his targets by 40% for 2 rounds. If you limit break him to 5 stars, he'll remove the attack boost of 4 random enemies, and after his action, he will reduce the attack of his targets by 45% for 2 rounds. And if you manage to get his 5p awakening, after his action, he will reduce the attack of his target by 48% for 2 rounds. Now going through his additional awakened passive, so after being defeated, he will revive with 70% of his HP when the next round begins, which can happen once per battle. So he doesn't trigger unyielding, but his revive is also very different to that of Zombie Man, as once he dies, he completely disappears out of the battle, then at the beginning of the following turn, he suddenly joins back from the side of the screen. Very weird mechanic. Also, once your whole team is dead, the battle ends, so Bakuzan won't be able to revive because the battle ended and you lost, so do take that into account. As well as this, he will also grant tenacity to himself for the first revival for 50% of his max HP. And if you manage to evolve him to his second awakening, he will be able to revive up to 2 times per battle, with the tenacity shield upon his first revival being granted 70% of his max HP. So I'm going to be completely honest with you, please don't get his second awakening, it is a waste of those valuable materials. Going through his enhancements, so for his talent page, SSR Plus characters now consist of 2 talent pages instead of 3, with each sigil on page 2 costing 6 sacks each, and each sigil on page 3 costing 15 sacks each. So there are no more talents that grant unyielding, however for Bakuzan, if he is one of your main units, then you can unlock both of his talent pages, and from his second page, I would recommend upgrading his base attack first, then upgrade his damage rate and grappler bonus if necessary, and from his third page, I would upgrade his base attack. Now additionally, also upgrade his extra energy gauge and his ult damage talents. Now I'm not 100% certain if he has an ult damage talent, but this is most likely the case, or if it's going to be charge damage, so you can still upgrade that stat whatever it may be. For his damage sigils, you can use sword and or ruthless sigils. And for his support sigils, you can use vitality and or tenacity sigils. Now in regards to his limit break, at the maximum you can get him up to 4 stars since his shards are readily available through the ongoing free event. However, that's the highest I would recommend, as I wouldn't deem him as a top priority in getting him to 5 stars, as there are so much better units that you would want to save your villain Omni Shards for, such as Sonic V2, Boros Plus, and especially Carnage Kabuto Plus. Now going through his awakening, at a minimum get him up to 1 star awakening to attain his attack buff. So the reason why I didn't say go up to his third P is because his charge damage ult cannot be affected by crit or crit damage. So realistically, you will be wasting 280 villain cores, which are very valuable, so please save them. However, if he is one of your main damage dealing units, then you can get him up to 4p to attain his crush rate buff. Otherwise, I would exceed going any further, as his 5p won't be available unless you get his keepsake, which is not worth getting at all in the first place, so you shouldn't be getting his keepsake. So now going through his gear setup, so for his ideal gear set, you would normally just want to focus on getting attack stats rather than focusing on a particular gear set. So you can rock a broken set with him, but otherwise you can have either a primal or martial arts set, they will work well with Bakuzan. And with his gears, you would want all 4 of his gears to have attack bonus in order to get his charge damage as high as possible. And for his buff gears, all of them should have attack, with your villain gear having attack bonus and flat attack, your grappler gear just having flat attack, and your dragon gear having damage rate and flat attack. And if you manage to get an augmentation from upgrading your S-Class gear, getting a tenacity augmentation would work best with Bakuzan. Now I will also be providing some examples of what sub lineups can look like with Bakuzan. So he can fit as your grappler if you plan to use a dot attacking team, like in example 1 where you have Vaccine Man and ATT, or you can also use him into a very tanky team, like with the second example where you have Hellfire Flame, Drive Knight and Goketsu to beef up Bangpu's shields. Now you could also use him in high attacking lineups such as in example 3 where you have Child Emperor, Sonic, RMG and Bakuzan all being very high damage dealers, or you can fit him like in the fourth example where you have 3 grapplers. As long as you can fit one of every other type. He does take a lot of the grappler slot, but he can work well against Bangpu's shield, so he's not a bad unit to have. Now these are also some example lineups if you don't have access to all of those expensive characters. So for the first example you can use Goketsu if you did manage to get him way back, because he will buff up Bangpu's shields, and he can be used as a main damage dealer alongside RMG, and then you can have Genji and Magic Trick Man as your main high tech and duelist slots. You can also do the same thing for example 2, where you can also instead replace it with a dot lineup where you have ATT and Vaccine Man, and then you can use Bakuzan as a sub DPS and to also go through those shields. Now with example 3, you can use him in charge lineups alongside G4 and Suiryu. Now there have been rumors that he is supposed to be released in the heroic summons in October as a raid up. These are just rumors, so hopefully Moonton or the fingerfun do decide to go with that. But once we do have access to Suiryu, he can be very useful with Bakuzan, so you can have 3 charge dealing units in your lineups and they could work very well. And then if you didn't manage to get Bangpu, he can still be used in Girogiro's core, as Girogiro's core is still slightly useful against some bomb PvP lineups or in PvE scenarios. If you do manage to have those 3 espers that you were previously using for Girogiro's core, like maybe ATT or RMG, then you can slot in Bakuzan very well, and if you have a My Mask alongside him, just so you have shields and everyone to substitute for Bangpu. So going through the main takeaways from this unit, he is a strong column DPS unit, where he can deal a maximum of 900% of his attack as charge damage, which can be effective against Bangpu's shields. Now majority of the time you'll be dealing either 400 or 600% of your attack, since the majority won't be able and shouldn't be pulling for his keepsake, as literally as soon as next month a much stronger column attacking damage dealer will be released, being Boris Plus, which I will get more into at the end of the month. Secondly, as previously mentioned, he is good at getting damage through Bangpu's shields, as charge damage does go through any type of blue shields. So in certain scenarios he can be great to sub into your team if you are struggling in PvP or in Mirage Trials. He also can remove any attack boost from multiple enemies, as well as reduce their attack stat, which can be very handy against those heavy hitters, so he is great in weakening your opponent's team. And finally, he is a free event character during the first anniversary of the global version, so for starting players he can be a great addition to the team. Now even though it is very easy and tempting in awakening him, I would highly recommend to not awaken him and to skip him entirely. So if you were contemplating on whether or not you wanted to get him, and if you managed to find my video, I have reasons why I highly advise not to awaken him. So for starters, he is a grappler, which is a very competitive type, especially since Bangpu is also a grappler, so it will be very hard putting 3 or even 2 grapplers into your teams. The reason why this is also very bad is because you have really good grapplers such as Gale Wind, and especially Carnage Kabuto Plus in December, who is an absolute must-have in your team, so Bakuzan meta is already going to be over by the end of the year. Secondly, he gets overpowered by so many other SSR Plus units, like they will auto-feed him pretty easily. Boris Plus can shred through him and his minions can explode. Carnage Kabuto, you don't want to target him directly or he will freaking kill you. Metal Bat, he's just got to constantly spin and kill you before you even have the chance to attack. Legit, Bakuzan is not going to be able to one-shot or deal significant damage than compared to these upcoming SSR Plus units, trust me. He is not going to be doing anything. And finally, he's by far the worst SSR Plus character out there. Every other SSR Plus character provides so much more utility and value to the team compared to Bakuzan. Some examples include Chad Emperor, who provides immunity to dot and provides crit rate for your team, as well as constantly attacking and healing from his dogs. Boros can deal massive amounts of damage that can ignore unyielding, and his damage sharing minions can tank and deal tons of damage. Also, Carnage Kabuto is a super tanky unit and is a brilliant damage soaker and reflector. The list just keeps going on and on. Even some LSSRs are better than Bakuzan. So honestly, he isn't worth getting, so please save your materials throughout his free event for other essential monster SSR Plus characters. So, should you pull for Bakuzan? So for free-to-play low and mid spenders, you definitely want to skip him and save your monster evolution stones for future monster SSR Plus characters, such as Carnage Kabuto and Gerugan Shu, as saving these materials can now allow you in spending much less than 180 black tickets for future characters during their debut, which is always a great thing since black tickets are so very scarce for free-to-play players. And for high spenders, I would advise to do the exact same thing and save his monster materials so that you can pull for extra monster units, or to unlock the second awakening of a particular character such as Boros, Carnage, Kabuto, or even Geru. However, if you do decide to get him, then I still wouldn't recommend getting his keepsake, but if you really want to get him to be much stronger, then you can spend to get his keepsake. But I would definitely not get his second awakening. It is honestly mortifying how terrible he is. I honestly don't know why his awaken passive is a thing. And now going through the predicted SSR Plus timeline for global. So this is what I predict will be the release schedule if the devs decide to follow the Southeast Asian release schedule, as well as not rushing the release of these units like they did with the LSSRs that we have, as we are still missing a few of them. Like, come on, man. Also, I accidentally included Piri Piri Prisoner twice in my last video, and it now has been corrected, so thank you very much to those who did point that out. Anyways, that wraps up the end of the video. I'd love to give shoutouts to all of my amazing YouTube members, so special thanks to my X tier members being Gamma, Blackshot, Joe, and Swift, and my 4 Z tier members being Dragon, Red Skunk, Jared, and Solionaire. So thank you all so very much. I really appreciate your additional support in keeping this channel alive. So that's all for today, and I will catch you all next time.